What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm so happy to have you as a listener today. If you're new here, I want you to know what this podcast is all about. This podcast is all about teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, helping you in all aspects of your life, and making your timeshare dreams come true. By the way, this entire podcast episode is a timeshare presentation. What I've learned in life is it's all about packaging things in a very digestible manner. And there's nothing more digestible than a podcast episode. And don't worry, I will make sure that you are generously rewarded in the afterlife. Let's go on with the presentation. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk about the book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, by Eric Jorgensen. Now, I will say that Eric Jorgensen did a wonderful job putting this book together, but because the book was not supposed to be written at all, but it's a bunch of Naval's ideas organized together as best as the author could do, it does read a little bit disjointed. And so what I decided to do is I went through the book, I picked things that I thought were the main points, and I picked things that I thought were really helpful. And I categorized them differently than the way the book was written out, which was a lot easier than writing the book because of the fact that I'm just doing a summary. Now, I do recommend that you pick up a free copy of the book, which is online in PDF format, and also available on the podcast that Eric Jorgensen made, and I will link both of those in the show notes. Now, you might be asking yourself right now, why would someone else write his book? The reason why is Naval is busy with other things. He's busy making money. He's busy enjoying his life. And if you were to ask him why he didn't write a book, he might just say it's a bad use of his time. And so someone else wrote his book for him to explain what he had to say. And I've experienced this myself. I actually had someone transcribe my words too in the past. It was a courtroom stenographer. And my words were, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth. That's pretty much what I said on the entire transcript, all 26 pages. And at this time, I would like to express my gratitude for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. America, baby. Let's go. Now, Tim Ferriss wrote the foreword to this book, and that's a big deal because Tim Ferriss generally doesn't write forewords. But he wrote it because he said he's been waiting for somebody to compile Naval's thoughts in a book format. And Tim actually goes to Naval for advice often. And if you remember from the episode Steal Like an Artist, one of the things that you need to do is learn from your hero's influences. And I, like many other podcasters, look up to Tim Ferriss. And we're here to learn from someone who has significantly impacted Tim Ferriss. So 2 things I need to say before I get started. Number 1, so many of the ideas in this podcast episode are Naval's ideas. It's hard for me to continue to keep referencing him, and Naval said this and Naval said that. So if it's brilliant, just chalk it up to Naval, just like in all my episodes. If it's brilliant, just chalk it up to the authors. Also, on top of that, I will be doing multiple episodes on this topic. I'll do 3 episodes on this book, and I will interrupt my regular schedule so I don't draw this book out too long and stretch it out over a month and a half. All right, so part 1 of this podcast series is about building wealth. And we're going to talk about learning first and foremost, because learning is the foundation of building wealth. And he says that knowledge changes, so you have to keep up. You have to constantly be learning so that you do not get left behind. Do not be like my parents who constantly hit me up for tech support. And they're like, hey, we need to go through this online portal of our will to write you out of it. And I'm just like, yeah, I actually don't remember how to use that. I'm so sorry. And then they're stuck, right? So don't be like them. Don't depend on other people. And the way you do that is to constantly be learning. Now, what he says in the book is the best jobs are not decreed or degreed. Bars, baby. Here we are. But he says the best jobs are creative expressions of continuous learners in the free market. So become a perpetual learner. And I think all of us are taking this more seriously as we walk into this AI revolution. And we realize if we don't learn how to manage AI, we're going to end up being managed by AI. So don't give Skynet the upper hand. Step up and learn. Learn everything that you need to be successful. So what are the things that you need to be successful? Well, one of the things he says is you need to learn arithmetic and numeracy. You need to learn the basics. You need to learn how to convey yourself in very simple, plain, ordinary English words, and you need to learn how to persuade. These are your foundations for success, and foundation is key. You don't have to learn high-level math. There's no need to become a whiz, but you do need these baseline skills. Another skill he says you need to learn is learn how to build. Learn how to build, learn how to sell. And he says if you can do both, you are unstoppable. And sales is a lot of different things, actually. Sales is not just selling. He says sales is marketing, communication, recruiting, raising money, inspiring people, and even doing PR. So if you're covering up a scandal, guess what? You're in sales, baby. You're selling fiction. That's fact. Is also lying. All right, anyways, what he says is that is what you need. He also says you need to achieve mastery in things that you're obsessed about. If you become a master at things you're obsessed about, you will dominate. And we'll talk more about that in a later section. The next section we're going to talk about is making money and wealth. Now, Naval was born poor in India. They immigrated to the United States. His dad was actually a pharmacist, but his degree did not transfer over, so he had to work at a hardware store. And one of the things that Naval said in the book is, I was born poor and miserable. Now I'm pretty well off and very happy, and I worked at those. So he's saying building wealth and becoming happy are things that you can actually work on. He says making money is not a thing you do, it's a skill you learn. It's like riding a bike or faking a heart attack. You're not going to be good at it the first time you do it, but with practice, you'll get the hang of it and you will look like a natural. So what does he categorize as wealth? He says wealth is things that make money while you sleep. That's his definition. And he says what you need to do is figure out what the world wants, but it doesn't know how to get, and deliver that very thing. Here's one example, a scrub daddy. No, I'm not talking about deadbeat fathers. I'm talking about a cool little sponge that smiles in your face as you are cleaning things. That is a really cool item, and people are buying that around the clock online. Also, Uber. Uber is a service that runs 24 hours a day, and the people who started Uber are making money while they sleep as these cars are delivering people and Waffle House entrees at 4 in the morning. In regards to making money, he says, if you don't own a piece of business, you don't have a path towards financial freedom. And so what you got to do is you got to work. You got to work to get equity. You got to work maybe in a company and maybe out on your own, but you have to get ownership in something. And it's not as hard as you think it is. You can actually put in sweat equity to get ownership in a business. And I've actually seen people do this. I've seen people help others who are starting off a business. And you know, when you start off a business, you're always going to struggle. And as a business was struggling early on, they were like, hey, I will help you out in the beginning, but I would also like a piece of this company. And I've seen friends of mine do that. They put in that work early on, and that work that they put in is paying dividends even to this day. And so what you got to do is you got to work to get money, work to get equity. And that could even be you being a shareholder of a company. If you work in it and they have stock options, that's one option. You can also invest money in the S&P 500. That's a great place to start if you're just getting started in investing and watching your money grow. And what he says is try your very best to not trade your time for money. Because he says even doctors and lawyers, when they trade their time for money, they are never going to become wealthy. He says they'll become well off, but they'll never become wealthy. So if you're a lawyer, instead of working for Morgan & Morgan, you need to work for you and you. Now, before we get too deep into the book, one thing I would like to say is Naval is a brilliant, brilliant man. And he has a little bit of a bias that you see often with brilliant people, which is to expect everyone to be as capable as he is. Now, with that said, he does have a lot of really important things to say about business, about wealth, and that's why I chose this book, because of the solid gold that he drops on these topics. All right, so the next topic we're going to talk about is leverage. And he talks about 3 forms of leverage as far as making money: labor or hiring other people, which he says is the worst; money, which he says is a good form of leverage, if used correctly, of course. And the third form he talks about is products with no marginal cost of replication. So examples of that are books, movies, media like a YouTube channel, and also code. And this is the best form he says there is, because it costs almost nothing to create more of them. And they have the potential to become cash cows, to print money after you spend the startup cost to get them made. Now, what do Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and the Google bros, Larry and Sergey, all have in common? If you said they don't pay their taxes, you're right. But besides that, what do they have in common? They made money through creating products with no marginal cost of replication, right? Facebook, Google, Microsoft, these are great because these are all essentially softwares and online services. They make a bunch of money and they scale very, very well. And he talks about getting into things that are great equalizers. And he's very much an advocate about getting involved with permissionless mediums, which is exactly what these things are. In particular, anything that has to do with code. And as you are thinking about leverage, make sure that you control your time and that you're tracked only on your outputs, not your inputs like time, but how many things that you sell, what you make that actually impacts people's life. For example, I know people who run businesses who make PDFs to sell to other people. And the cool thing about that is once it's made, it's done. You can sell it for $20, $40, whatever it is. And there's no limit to the number of them that you can sell if you have a good product. And there's other factors as well as far as marketing goes and demand and all the other things that always come into play when you're selling things. But the fact that you make it once, you can sell it continually, and as long as it's making an impact on people's lives, you could make a bunch of money from that thing. And so what he says is you need to gain your time back, right? Just like in the episode about essentialism, he says you need to stop doing everything but high value projects. And he continually talks about making sure your inputs don't determine your outputs. He says if you're a real estate agent, guess what? You can sell $5 million homes while other people are selling $150,000 homes. If those exist anymore anyways. But he says when you are selling more expensive homes, what you're doing is you are leveraging yourself and making sure that the time you put in doesn't necessarily impact the money that you make. Recently, I met someone who was a dog boarder, and they were a really nice person, but I was thinking to myself, man, dog boarding is the ultimate exchange of time for money, input to output. And unless you are boarding 101 Dalmatians, you are never going to be able to scale your business in order to become wealthy. And I know we're focusing a lot about money. It's not just about money, but if you can work smarter and not harder, that's where you want to be. And that's why so many people who make music, they don't want to be touring musicians only. They want their music to go inside of TVs and movies and other mediums that pay them royalties so they can collect big checks and not have to work for them. Because when a song is in a movie or a TV show, guess what's happening? You're making money in your sleep. And that's wealth right there. And think about this. WhatsApp sold to Facebook for what, $14 billion, something like that? And here's the deal about apps like WhatsApp, right? They are Silicon Valley darlings. Most of the Silicon Valley darlings are all tech. And the reason why is because tech prints money. Instagram, when it was bought by Facebook for $1 billion, that was a heist by Mark Zuckerberg. And Naval has spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. You can see that through his writing, but he's right. anything that prints money like this stuff is where you want to be. And these things are not easy. We're not sitting here saying, oh, all you got to do is make the next big app. All you got to do is create something that is going to affect billions of people. Yes, these things are difficult, but to have that of how do I create leverage so that I'm not toiling away for my wages, that's the mentality you need to have. All right, so the next category I made was what to do. What he says is, again, society will pay you to give it what it wants, but it doesn't know how to get elsewhere. I shared a very similar statement in the beginning of the episode, and that's what you got to do. One of the best examples of this is these history videos that I see online, like Oversimplified or the Crash Course videos. These are great, and the reason why they have so many subscribers is because they are making history super palatable, super fun, and super engaging. So what you got to do for yourself is you need to productize yourself. What does that mean? Exactly what it sounds like. Selling plasma donations, baby. Sell yourself, literally. Now, productize yourself in all seriousness is when you figure out what you have to offer that's authentically you, and then you offer it at scale. So how do you figure out how to productize yourself? One thing he says is find out what came effortlessly to you when you were younger. How are you going to figure that out? Well, you got to ask your people. You need to ask your family members. You have to ask your best friend. You have to ask people who have been observing you because oftentimes they can see things that you can't. So for me, I've always been pretty funny and I've always been pretty honest about myself. Those are two things that people have said a lot about me as they've observed me. And both of those factor in very well in creating a podcast. So what you got to do is you got to figure out what you have to offer the world with your innate talents, with your genuine curiosity, and also with your passions, right? And what you got to do is figure out what you're interested in, because when you do, that's when you'll thrive. He says, find work that feels like play. In my previous episode about the book Steal Like an Artist, I referenced a quote about the work you do when you procrastinate is probably the work that you should do for the rest of your life. And that is straight up true, because if you do it while you procrastinate, you're going to do it even when there's no benefit to doing it. And you're going to get so much better than other people at it. And this ties into something that he says as well. Whether it's business, exercise, romance, friendship, the meaning of life is to do things for their own sake. Follow your intellectual curiosity. And that is spot on, right? If you follow your intellectual curiosity, if you follow things that you're interested in, you will do so much better than other people because it is a valve that you just can't turn off. And the people who are the best at anything and who dominate are the ones where they can't not do the thing that they're doing. So whether you're a musician or you're a comedian or a coder or a public speaker or anything, if you are doing it when other people are resting, you're going to get so much better than them and you are going to dominate, as long as you have some natural ability as well. And he says that what people don't realize is the internet is an absolute goldmine of opportunity, and it is the ultimate leverage. And that's where you need to take the things that you're good at, you're interested in, that you're passionate about, and figure out how to leverage those things out to the rest of the world. And he says that you can escape competition by being authentically yourself, because you are the best at being yourself, right? Like Bill Nye, nobody can be more Bill Nye than Bill Nye, right? And like Bill Nye, nobody can be more you than you. And so you need to double down on your uniqueness and be your authentic self. And this is not just about money at this point, right? This is also about living a life that feels meaningful, which we'll talk more about in the happiness section. But when you are fully yourself, that's when you come alive, and that's when you have a life that's enjoyable. One thing he talks about and what to do with yourself is to embrace accountability, to do things under your own name, and take some risks when it comes to business and when it comes to life in general, Because what will happen is society will actually reward you with responsibility, equity, and leverage. And that's what you want. You want equity, you want leverage, and you want responsibility, because essentially what you're doing is you are getting the credit for the thing that you did. And sometimes you're going to be embarrassed, and sometimes you're going to have missteps, and that's a part of life. But like the old adage goes, no guts, no glory, and that's what you got to do. And it's not the end of the world if you end up having a little bit of embarrassment, having a little bit of failure. That's life, right? Some of your favorite musicians, their first album was garbage. You know what they did? They just made another album and they got better. And that's what you got to do as well. All right, let me summarize that real quick. Yo, you got to be living free. It's about authenticity. It's about all the things that you would do just for free. And that's what I want to see. A whole bunch of things that I freaking love. I can't put the pen down. That's what I got to say. And that's what I do. Come through like Dr. Dre. Sit with the beats. Sit with the things that you freaking got up in yourself. And that's what I'm saying. You just got to get it. I'm talking about leverage. How you going to do it? You're going to put your name up on it. And that's what I do. That is a promise to yourself that you're going to keep going all the time, and know that you find yourself in the dirt, but pick yourself up. And that's what I say. That's how you get the Riders Cup. You ride on up just by doing things that feel like play all the time while you're procrastinating. That's what I'm saying all the freaking time. You got to keep doing the things that are in you. And that's what I say. You got to continue up in your life. And that's how you win. Spit a freestyle from the beginning, spit off the top. And that's how it go. Winning right there, up in the flow. All right, so those are some of the things that you got to do. And another thing you got to do is to build your character and your reputation so that people will want to do deals with you. This is very, very important to be that person that people think of, because they're like, hey, that person is going to take care of business. That person is not going to do me dirty. That person is going to do right by me. And we'll talk more about this in a later section, but that is very, very important for you to live your life in a way where people want to work with you. All right, moving on. Let's focus on the section I call what not to do. So he says, stay out of jail. Don't gamble at all. Watch your health, because these are all things that can ruin your life. And I would also say, don't run for Speaker of the House, because they will try to come and get you. And yeah, these are important things, because how are you going to be successful and wealthy and happy when you have bad health or when you're in prison? Unless your name is the Chapo, guess what? Being in prison is going to dampen your ability to make it all happen. And not having any money will greatly reduce your ability to make things happen. So you basically just got to not create ruin in your life. Also, he says, don't despise wealthy people, because if you secretly despise wealth, it will elude you. So don't be jealous of people who are successful. Don't hate their success because they're more successful than you. Because what ends up happening is, if you do that, people will sense it. And what will end up happening is they will not want to work with you. Don't ever be jealous of people. Look at what they're doing. Figure out how they got to where they are and see how you can learn from them instead of being jealous of them. And this is real, because anytime I'm around someone that I'm more successful than, and I wouldn't consider myself a successful person yet, but anytime I'm around somebody who makes me feel bad about having more success than them, I don't want to be around that person. I don't want to feel bad about myself. So what you got to do is understand that people are people, and you don't like being around people who throw that kind of thing in your face, who make you feel bad because you're financially better off than them, or you have more success than them. So what you got to do is remember, people are people, and you don't want to be that person that drives away successful people from your life. Another thing he talks about is don't play the status game. Play the wealth game instead. Because what is wealth? Wealth is a positive sum game, and status is a zero sum game. So what are status games? Status games are when someone is trying to win. They're all around this world. It's all about your rankings. It's television ratings. It's zero-sum games. Listen, what is a status game? Status games are when people are competing someone gets first, second, third place. You have a pecking order and it's all zero sum because if someone wins, someone else has to lose. That's the way they're set up. Naval speaks against them. He says, don't play status games, play wealth games. It's not about who's best dressed, who has the prettiest eyes, who's most likely to succeed. None of that. He says, you need to focus on wealth because wealth is a positive sum game. Everyone can win. Everyone can get up on top. Let's go. And that's why I'm all about them positive sum games as well. I don't care if you're hot because I'm hot too. And that's all that matters. We can both be hot together, baby. Let's go. And so I myself am trying to get out of the status game. When I hop on social media, I'm not worried about how many likes I'm getting. I'm just there to promote my podcast and marry off my sister. I'm just kidding. I don't have a sister. But I'm just there for business. I'm just there to bring myself closer to my goals. Status doesn't matter. And one of my favorite quotes from the book is this: play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's what we're doing oftentimes when we're on social media, when we're out there trying to gain more status. We're trying to get more likes, comments, and followers. And my question to you is, can you pay your rent with these things? Okay? If you can, cool, keep doing them. But if not, what you're doing is you're playing a stupid game and you win your stupid prize of the dopamine that gets you nowhere closer to your goals. And as we talk about social media, I'm talking about my ideal self because I struggle just like everyone else. I want to be liked. I have a lizard brain that needs affirmation. But when I'm at my best, this is how I act. Another thing he says is when you ever hear the voice that says, treat yourself, you know whose voice that is? That's the devil. The devil tells you to treat yourself, and he says, don't upgrade your lifestyle, which is a very easy thing to do. But he says, stay off of that hedonic treadmill. Stay off of the idea that you're making more money, so you spend more money. Because if you don't upgrade your lifestyle, eventually what ends up happening is you might become financially free. And he is all about freedom over everything. Yes, of course, when we talk about these things, yes, you can be too extreme with these things. But it's true. Eventually, if you don't upgrade your lifestyle continually, you will have enough money to live on if you continue to make your money and store it away in investments. Let your money make you money and not make you feel more comfort and luxury and so on and so forth. Because what you can end up doing is you can end up retiring early. And his definition of retirement is not just, hey, I don't work anymore. But his definition of retirement, I think, is very interesting and very good. He says, retirement is when you stop sacrificing today for an imaginary tomorrow. When today is complete in and of itself, you're retired. I have a friend right now who's going after a line of work that he really likes. And as he's positioning himself into this line of work, he's going to go to work excited. He's going to come home from work feeling satisfied. And because of that, in a way, you could say that he's retired because his day feels good in everything that he does. I like his idea of retirement because retirement is not just about sitting around the pool and laying out and not doing anything with yourself. But I agree with Naval. When your day is just great as it is, that's where you want to be. That is retirement. Because when you retire, you're not just going to not do anything, right? You're just going to do things that satisfy you. And that's what you got to go after. That should be your end goal. All right, this next category I'm going to call who to do business with. So what he says is you need to play long-term games with long-term people. Here's a direct quote, which reads, all the returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest. And so your business relationships are going to compound, and they're going to make you more money over time. So you got to treat those business relationships with a lot of care. And also what you got to do is you have to focus on your reputation because your reputation compounds as well. And if you have a good reputation, again, you're going to be that go-to person that people think of. What you want is to be like the wolf in Pulp Fiction, right? Have you seen that movie where they're like, the wolf, that's all you had to say? Because they knew the wolf would come and fix things that were broken, clean up the mess that they made. And that's what you need to be in people's minds. The go-to person who's going to take care of biz, and DBR, which is do business right. So he says, try to find the right people to do business with. And this actually relates more to his life than it does maybe yours or mine, but it is important business relationships. And so you got to keep your business relationships good and tight and always do right by the people you do business with. And one of the things that he says in the book is when you find the right thing to do and the right people to work with, invest deeply. And that's right on. And invest deeply could be you being a part of a small company and feeling like you have a great deal of ownership in that small company. And as that company grows, your net worth can grow and your position in the company can grow. And even though you're an employee, you're also putting yourself in a situation of ownership. So there are ways that you can be an employee and also build equity. Now, one of the things that he says that I think is super, super important is if you're not successful, how do you surround yourself with successful people? Well, he says, figure out what you're good at, again, your innate abilities, and start helping people with it. Give it away for free. And what's going to end up happening is karma is going to work itself out because people are consistent. And when you're helpful to people, oftentimes they will be helpful back to you. Now, a forewarning that he gives is when people brag about how honest they are, that's a telltale sign that they aren't honest. And remember when I said earlier that I was honest? That's actually not true. I'm actually quite dishonest. Am I doing this right? Now, these are jokes, but he says, watch out for people who talk themselves up too much. Watch out for people who claim to be super honest because they're oftentimes covering for something. And he has a pretty high standard for who he surrounds himself with. He says, the closer you want to be with me, the better your values have to be. This is similar to my mantra, which is, the closer you want to get to me, the better your breath has to be. Basically the same thing, right? But yeah, that's right. You need to surround yourself with people with good values because if they don't have good values, eventually those lack of values will turn against you or they'll drag you into their mess of lack of principles and their problems will become your problems. So the last section is going to be about time and how to spend it. Now, here's a great quote from him. You don't get rich by spending your time to save money. You get rich by saving your time to make money. That's right. Don't spend your time to save money. It's not a smart thing to do. What you got to do is realize that your time is very, very valuable. And if you can save time, that time can be used to make more money. And this is why I don't pluck my own eyebrows, okay? I got a person who comes and plucks my eyebrows for me while I'm on conference calls doing overseas deals. And if you want to win in life, you need an eyebrow plucker as well. And so what he advises is set a personal hourly rate that feels high to you and stick to it. And just for number's sake, I'll throw out $500 because he says it needs to feel high to you. And he says when you set that personal hourly rate, if anything costs less to outsource, then that's exactly what you do. And you say to people and you say to yourself, I don't do that. That's not a problem that I solve. I pay people to take care of XYZ. Now, I used to rake the leaves at my parents' house as a gesture of love, as a gesture of my care for them. But even when I worked alongside my brother and we both had leaf blowers, it would still take us hours to do this. Sometimes the sun would go down on us, and eventually I came to the point where I said, this is ridiculous. And now what I say is never again. I will not rake another leaf at my parents' house. I will rake a man's eyes out with my bare hands in a cage match before I rake another leaf there. What we do is we pay somebody to come and take care of it. And that is also a gesture of love. It's a different gesture of love, but guess what? I don't do that. I don't have time to spend half of a day out there toiling in the leaves, okay? And I don't do most of my own yard work. I only do certain things that I want done a certain way. If it helps me to come up with good ideas, I will go out there and do that yard work. But these manual tasks can be outsourced to other people. There are people out there who can take care of them while you focus on the important things of making money, of creating wealth. And that's exactly what you got to do. So what should you be focusing your time on? Well, he says if you're a young person, and I think this applies to older people as well, but he says for young people, what you got to do is spend your time making the big decisions. And 3 big decisions are where you live, who you're with in a relationship, and what you do. And he says this because when you live in a city, you're going to be there for a while. When you take a job, you're going to be there for a while. Maybe 10 years for a city, maybe 5 years for a job. And when you get in a relationship, you might be in that relationship for a long time, maybe up to 10 years, hopefully longer if you're looking for your forever person. And if you end up having a kid with them, guess what? Regardless, they are your forever person. So be careful. But in all seriousness, these decisions are the big decisions, and you need to spend 1 to 2 years deciding these things. And you need to say no to everything else and focus on having time to figure out these things, having time also to solve for important problems. Because the city that you live in, the job that you take, the person that you end up with can change the trajectory of your life. So you got to take this stuff seriously. Another thing he says with time is quite the hot take, which is not about hard work. He says, yes, hard work, of course, is important, but hard work must be put to the right thing. And if you don't know what the right thing is, you need to work hard at figuring out what the thing that you should be working on is. So basically, he's saying, don't work hard unless you figure out the thing that you actually need to work on and then start working hard, because otherwise your hard work is going to be wasted. He's basically saying working hard on the wrong thing is like spending time with the wrong woman or the wrong man. And I've actually experienced this firsthand. I went on a date with a woman that I connected with online, and she didn't look like her pictures, but hey, that keeps happening to me, so whatever. I go up to her, I say, hey, Jennifer, how are you doing? We start talking, and it turns out that my actual date was at the end of the bar, and I was just talking to a woman whose name just so happened to be Jennifer. And she was sitting there watching me talk this other woman up, and she got angry. But it's all good. I made it up to the right Jennifer by marrying her. Let's go. Now, this is not a true story, but something like this could actually happen in this day and age. That's why it's important to be honest, people. And if you're bragging about how close you look to the pictures in your profile, you're probably covering for something else. But he does say that you need to focus on figuring out what you should be working on. And yes, it is hard work. For a lot of people, it takes decades to figure out what you can uniquely provide. So it's not going to happen overnight. I've experienced this myself. We've seen this in famous people like Anthony Bourdain, like Toni Morrison. These people have had a long journey to figure out what it is they're offering the world. And if people that great are having difficulties figuring it out, then you probably will as well. Now, when it comes to your time, he says, earn with your mind, not with your time. Figure out how to get paid for your judgment. Figure out how to get paid for the unique knowledge that you have. And be like Warren Buffett. Because what Warren Buffett does is he gets paid for the deals he makes. He doesn't get paid per hour. He doesn't get paid for anything except having good judgment, being great at what he does, and having a great reputation of high integrity. And so that's what you got to do. That's where you got to be. And what you need in life is a little patience. Yeah. That's right. You need patience. Don't count the time. Don't count the days. Just put your head down and work. Because if you are counting, you'll run out of patience before your success arrives. And we've seen this with Keith Urban, who didn't make it as a country music star until 14 years into his career, and he started feeling bad, and he started drinking a lot of alcohol and doing a bunch of cocaine, and that's not where you want to be. What you want to do is realize that these things take time, and if you keep working, you will end up getting there. Now, as we talk about spending our time, here's some things that he talks about in how to create your own luck. First and foremost, he says, become the best at what you do, but that's somewhat unrealistic for a lot of people. If that feels impossible, what he says is prepare your mind and learn to be sensitive to chances other people miss because you have good judgment, because you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. That will be a way to create luck. That will be a way to create success. Another way is hustle and hustle and hustle until you stumble into it. And the fourth way, which isn't really a way, is to hope it finds you, which is more of a lottery mentality. Now, I'm going to end on this because I feel like this is Naval saying it's not going to be all puppies and rainbows and all that stuff. So don't just expect things to work themselves out. They're going to require that you actually go out there and you suffer. And what he says is your real resume is just a catalog of all your suffering. And in order to do great things, you're going to have to do difficult things. And I know that sounds negative, but really that's the only way to success, for you to go out there and to struggle. Everybody wants success. Nobody wants to struggle. And the reason why most people don't get the success that they want is because they're not willing to struggle. So struggle well, and continue to level up. If you do that, if you are willing to pay the sacrifice, then you will be able to build wealth and you will be able to build a life that you're happy with. All right, so that's all I got for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned a lot from it. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit follow so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you like this podcast, please rate and review it in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That makes a huge difference in getting the word out, in getting some quality guests, which is definitely part of the plan for the future. And I'd love to connect with you online. You can find me on Instagram at Your One Life Podcast. Shout out to my man Siraj for making the theme music. This is Your One Life. I'm Kim Young Kim. Hope you have an amazing day and an amazing week. And until next time, peace.